Okay. All right, let's start. Okay. So lesson no on impairment of assets. Now, we say that impairment no would mean it may be a physical deterioration. How do we know that an asset is impaired? Okay. So, pag sinabi nating impairment, no, so it may be a physical or an economic impairment. But more on the physical impairment, no? Because of physical, sabi natin, because of wear and tear, because of no many factors, no, that may impair or may decrease the value of an asset. Okay. So, kung ang tao nai-impair, so with non-living things, okay? So with assets of a company, okay? So that no siguro in answer or in response no to ito a natural something like a natural phenomenon no that anything is subject to impairment. Sabi nga natin in the Bible there is a time to be born, a time to grow and a time to die. So itong mga non-living things na ito, itong mga property, plant and equipment, inventories, assets arising from construction contract, no? Financial assets, okay, agricultural assets, investment property, which will be our next lesson, and even non-current assets held for sale, they are all subject to impairment. Okay. So in response to this natural phenomenon, no, or sabi natin ordinary phenomenon, okay? Okay, we have PAS number 36, no, that guides us no in accounting for impairment of assets. Syempre dapat alam natin kung ano yung particular asset or specific asset that is subject to impairment. And even intangible assets, the more yung intangible assets natin, no, na i-impair yan. Okay. Now, PAS 36 no is applicable among other assets no applicable to land, to building, to machinery and equipment, to investment property carried at cost. Naku, sabi mo bakit carried at cost? Di ba? Now, di ba sabi natin later on we will learn that no accounting for investment property no may be may be done or may be made by applying either the cost method or rather the cost model or the fair value model. Di ba, if you still remember yung cost model, even in PPE, di ba, meron tayong cost model wherein cost minus accumulated depreciation and accumulated impairment losses no is recognized. 'Di ba? Okay. So meaning to say kapag may cost model, kaya nakalagay diyan investment property carried at cost model. Kasi pag fair value model, 'di ba? Anong ginagawa natin from time to time, nire-revalue natin yung ating asset, particularly our investment property, no? So at the end of the reporting period, we measure no in terms of fair value. Okay, kaya ang sinasabi dito naka-single out no that we will apply PAS 36 to investment property which we carry on our books at cost using the cost model, right? Okay. Applicable din ang PAS 36 kanino? Sa saan? Intangible assets. Because intangible assets are also subject to impairment. Even goodwill, which is an identifiable intangible asset, is also subject to impairment. Kaya nga lagi tayong may testing for impairment, no? As regards to, intangible asset. Now, goodwill is specifically mentioned. And then, of course, investment in subsidiaries, associates, and joint ventures carried at cost. Okay? So, kita mo, laging carried at cost. So, applicable yung PAS 36, no, to assets, no, that we what? That we, what do you call this? That we measure, no, using the cost model. Okay, and then assets carried at revalued amounts under PAS 16 and PAS 38. Ano ba yung PAS 16? PPE. Ano ba yung PAS 38? It is intangible, or the PFRS or PAS for intangible asset. So ito yung application ng PAS 36. Okay. Ngayon sabi mo, di ba ang inventories, yung financial assets, no, yung mga assets that we construct, that let's say a construction company constructs, okay? Bakit hindi sila kasali dito sa PAS 36 although they are also subject to impairment? Kasi yung guideline na PAS 36, no, will not be applicable to these assets, no, as mentioned or as listed down here, no, kasi meron tong sarili-sarili. Hindi naman ibig sabihin na hindi applicable yung PAS 36, no? Wala na, hindi mo na i-recognize yung impairment dito sa mga assets na ito. No, nagre-recognize pa rin tayo ng impairment, but using the guideline, no, of that specific asset. So, 'di ba, meron tayong PAS number 2 for inventories, no? Kaya even impairment of inventory is accounted for using PAS 2 and not PAS 36. Okay? So, ano-ano pa, no? Yung deferred tax asset or PAS 12, which we will discuss later on. Okay, assets arising from employee benefits, so we will use PAS number 19 as revised. For financial asset, hindi na ito, PFRS number 9 na. Okay? So, investment property carried at fair value, PAS 40. Okay? And then agricultural asset, PAS 41. Kasi may impairment din. We will also record impairment, but using their specific, PAS and not PAS number 36. Okay? But for all others na walang specific, walang specific PAS, PAS 36, is applicable. Okay? Now, you have key definitions. So, syempre, pag sinabi mong impairment of asset, the first thing, okay, that you need to know about is impairment loss. What is impairment loss? Okay, so it is said that in accounting, impairment loss is the amount by which the carrying amount or the book value, in the balance sheet after deducting accumulated depreciation and accumulated impairment losses. So meaning to say, impairment loss, the amount by which the carrying amount of an asset or cash generating unit exceeds its recoverable amount. Mas malaki pa yung carrying amount or the book value of the asset kesa dun sa kanyang recoverable amount. Question, anong ibig sabihin ng recoverable amount? Okay, so recoverable amount, di ba tayo laging the lower of, between, or the lower of this, between, the lower of this, the lower of one, given two values, di ba lagi tayong whichever is lower. Now, in this case, recoverable amount is the higher of an asset's fair value less the cost of disposal. Okay? Pag sinabi nating fair value minus cost of disposal, i-compare natin yan doon sa value in use. So later on, you will know, ano ba ibig sabihin ng value in use? Do you still remember present value? No? Because in computing or calculating the value in use, we use the present value factors. Diba? Okay. So recoverable amount is the higher of an asset's fair value minus cost of disposal, or it may be called the net selling price versus the value in use. Okay. So, meron tayong gagawing comparison. No? And the recoverable amount is the higher amount. Not the lower amount, but the higher amount. Okay. Ngayon, tanong. Okay. So when you say recoverable amount, no, dapat alam natin, ano ba ibig sabihin ng fair value? Kasi fair value minus cost of disposal. Right? Ngayon, what is the meaning of fair value now? You know, there is already a PFRS, no, specifically for fair value measurement. Kaya yung official definition, although we may define fair value in many ways, okay, we need to know, or we need to define fair value, no, in terms of PFRS number 13. And what is PFRS number 13? Fair value measurement. Okay, kaya dapat alam natin anong ibig sabihin ng fair value, and it is said that according to PFRS number 13, the fair value is the price that would be received if you are going to sell the asset. So sabi mo, exit price pala ito. Okay, exit price. Okay, the price that would be received to sell an asset, therefore it's an exit price, or paid to transfer a liability in an orderly transaction between market participants at the measurement date. In other words, simply put, fair value is the exit price of an asset. Okay? So ang ibig sabihin, fair value, teka muna, fair value lang ba? Ima-minus natin yung cost of disposal. Kaya ang ibig sabihin yan, it is the net selling price versus the value in use, so whichever is higher between the two. Ano naman ang ibig sabihin ng value in use? Now, when you say value in use, it is the present value of the future cash flows expected to be derived from an asset or cash generating unit. Pag sinabi natin cash generating unit, it is the smallest group of assets that generate revenue, or of course, generate cash for the business. Okay? So, sabi mo, present value, tapos may future cash flows, di ba, if you still remember capital budgeting, di ba gumagawa tayo ng ano natin, o kunwari, di ba, annual cash returns. Tapos imino-multiply natin ng present value factor. Right? Okay, do you still remember that? Yun, the same principle applies, no, for value in use. So sabi natin, ang value in use is the present value of the future cash flows. Question, how many years would be the future cash flows? Hindi lang isang taon. No, pag sinabi natin in accounting, future cash flows, particularly in financial accounting, it should be the future cash flows of at least 5 years. No? So pag naggagawa tayo ng annual cash projection, no, the annual cash projection should be at least 5 years. Hindi 1 year, hindi 2 years, hindi 3 years, hindi 4 years, at least minimum of 5 years. Okay? So, kailangan palang malaman natin ang future cash flows. Ano yan? Internal ano yan? Kumbaga yan, it is something that we project, no, internally. Magkano yung ating future cash flows, no? And then we will multiply by the present value factor. If it is a series of cash flows for 5 years, then kung series yan, even stream, no, or even cash flow, then what you do is just multiply it by the ordinary annuity of 1. or series of cash flow present value factor for a series of cash flows. 'Di ba? Paano naman kung uneven yung cash flow or mixed stream ang tawag natin? Ano gagamitin nating present value factor? The present value factor, no? Present value factor of 1 to be received once at the end of each year. Okay, 'di ba? 'Yun ang ginagamit natin. If you still remember yung capital budgeting nyo, then you can get the value in use. Kung may value in use ka na, no, i-compare mo na doon sa net selling price, which is the fair value minus cost to dispose, then compare mo yung dalawa, whichever is the higher amount, yun yung sinasabi nating recoverable amount, which you compare with what? The carrying amount of the asset. And the difference between the two figures, no, will be our impairment loss. Sabi mo, may impairment loss ba pag ang carrying amount ay mas malaki pa kaysa sa recoverable amount? Yes. Ibig sabihin yung naka-record dun sa libro, mas maliit, mas malaki pa kaysa dun sa recoverable amount. Ang ibig sabihin, nagkaroon ng impairment loss. Okay? Pero pagbaliktad, let's say, mas malaki yung recoverable amount doon sa carrying amount, di natural, there is no impairment loss. Kasi mas malaki pa rin yung recoverable amount doon sa carrying amount. Right? Kaya titingnan mo, no? Kaya ikino-compare natin. Okay, now, how do we identify an asset that may be impaired? No? May mga signales, may mga simptomas, nagmamanifest yung mga simptomas or symptoms or may mga signs tayo. Okay. So, at the end of its reporting period, an entity is required to assess whether there is any indication, may mga indicators, no, that an asset may be impaired, no? Okay, ano kaya yung mga indicators na yon that will tell us, no, that it's time, no, to recognize impairment loss. Okay? Kaya nga meron tayong tinatawag na impairment test, no, in order to know whether the or the asset of the company has already deteriorated or has already, kumbaga, nagkaroon ng significant decrease in the value, or yung sinasabi nating expected or future probable benefits. Kapag nagkaroon ng decrease in future probable benefit, nagkakaroon ng impairment. There is impairment. Okay? Kaya nga sinusubject natin yung mga asset na to impairment test. Okay. Now, what are the indications of impairment? Dalawa raw, ano? Okay, so how do you know? May external sources tayo, may internal sources. So for external sources, these are sources or factors that we may not be able to control. Like for example, market value decline. You know market value. You know quoted, kahit pa may in an active market, may mga quoted prices. No, we cannot say that these quoted prices are fixated kasi they are influenced directly by market force. Kaya anytime nagde-decline yan, anytime nagpe-fluctuate yan. Paano kung nagkaroon ng market value decline? Is that an indication of impairment? The answer is yes. Okay, ano pa? Negative changes in technology. Naging obsolete na yung model kasi nagkaroon na ng bago, nakadevelop ng bagong technology. Kaya nga itong mga natin, yung mga what do you call this, especially mga digital equipment, naku, subject yan sa malakas mag-deteriorate yan or maging obsolete yan. Yung mga electronic products or electronic ma-outsmart lang yan ng ibang ng bagong discovery. Siguradong there will be a deterioration or an impairment of no such. Okay, so negative changes in technology, markets, economy, or even loss. Okay? Now, increases in market interest rate. Naku, pati pala interest rate, no, will affect no, or may cause impairment of an asset. Okay, net assets of the company higher than the market capitalization. Okay. So those are external sources, no, that a company may not be able to control. Okay. Now what about internal sources? Ano ba yung mga indications, no? Obsolescence or physical damage. Sabihin natin yung delivery truck. Nagkaroon ng what do you call this, damage because of some kind of accident. Physical damage na yon. Naapektuhan yung makina, and it is repairable, kaya lang the functioning may not be the same as when, no, prior to the physical damage. No, asset is idle. Ano ibig sabihin ng asset is idle? Non-productive na, hindi na magamit-gamit. Okay, so it becomes idle, or asset is idle or non-productive. So part of a restructuring or held for disposal. So kunwari group of assets, isang business segment, talagang they already close shop, no? And they are already they are already intended for sale. Edi syempre while they are still in the process of looking for buyer, nakatenga lahat yung mga anong yun. Yung mga what do you call this, assets of that business segment. Okay, so maaaring baka ma-stock up yun. Okay, so because if an asset is not used, no matter how how valuable that asset is, once you stop using it, masisira na yan tuluyan. Kahit nga ang building, no, wag mong tirahan ng building for so many years, no? For a long period of time. Kahit napakaganda ng building na yon, no, it will deteriorate physically. Kaya mahirap, kunwari bahay hindi mo titirahan, no, masisira kagad yon. So you just you just wait that it will really physically deteriorate, no? So ganun yon. Kaya pag ang asset is idle, na i-stock up yan. Anything that is idle, anything that is non-productive, no, will be impaired. Kahit ang mga utak natin, kapag hindi natin ginamit and it remains idle for a long period of time, ano mangyayari? Magdi-deteriorate. Don't you know that the number one cause pala, I read this, no, from a scientific magazine, no, yung medical, something like medical, parang medical journal. Okay, ang cause pala, one of the major causes of what do you call this, yung nakakalimot, ano ba yun, what do you call this, yung ang tawag dito, yung sakit ng matanda, yung nagde-decline yung mental yung mental ability niya, no? Alzheimer. Okay? Number one cause is when the brain becomes idle. Kaya dapat pala as you age, dapat yan yung mga crossword puzzle, mga computer games like yung bang yung games that will make you think critically, kailangan pala natin yun, no? And then you keep on reading, computing or calculating, make yourselves busy. Kasi number one cause of Alzheimer is that the brain, no, is non-productive. Hindi mo pinagagana. 'Di ba? Ganun 'yon. So ganun din ang asset. Kaya nga kapag idle siya, well, the next thing that you will do, you will have to account for impairment losses. Okay? So worse economic performance than expected. That's also one. So for investments in subsidiaries, joint ventures, or associates, the carrying amount is higher than the carrying amount of the investee's asset, or a dividend exceeds the total comprehensive income of the investee. Okay, so napakaraming causes, no, or rather sources, no, of knowing or determining if it is really high time to account for impairment losses. Okay? Now these are only examples, no? And they are not complete. So these are the more common sources of impairment. No information about impairment. Okay? So, alam na natin yung determining the recoverable amount. Okay? So, fair value less cost of disposal versus the value in use, whichever is the higher amount. Okay? So value in use, all you have to do is just try to recall what you did in capital budgeting. Di ba may mga capital budgeting problems kayo na diniscuss nyo sa financial management, even in MAS, no, particularly strategic cost management, 'di ba? Meron tayong capital budgeting doon. So value in use, no? Okay. So you will also be using discount rate. Bakit discount rate? It is kasi 'di ba kailangan, no, pag gumagamit ka ng present value, you should know the discount rate that you will use. Tama? Okay. So ganun ano? Now, the discount rate may be the cost of capital. Kapag maraming sources ng fund, no, in order to finance the asset, ang gagamitin mo is weighted average cost of capital kasi maraming sources ng fund. Do you still remember the computation of WACC, yung weighted average cost of capital? Okay. Or it may be the entity's incremental borrowing cost in the absence of weighted average cost of capital. Or you may use the market borrowing rates. Well, it depends on, it depends on company policy which one to use as discount rate. Okay. Ngayon, you recognize or you record impairment loss. Okay? So, an impairment loss is recognized whenever recoverable amount is below carrying amount. I already said that. The impairment loss is recognized as what? Kinakapitalize mo ba ang impairment loss? No. It is immediately recognized as an expense. Therefore, kasali siya to calculate the net profit for the year. So, sa ibig sabihin, ipine-present natin siya as one of the items in the income statement. Okay? So, impairment loss. Okay? So, unless it relates to a revalued asset where the impairment loss is treated as a revaluation decrease. But in all cases, impairment loss is recognized as an expense. Okay. Now, adjustment or adjust depreciation for future periods. Kaya ang entry natin debit impairment loss and credit accumulated depreciation. Di ba? Okay, so yun ang normally pag sa PPE that is subject to depreciation na impair, entry mo, nagde-debit ka ng impairment loss, nagke-credit ka ng accumulated depreciation. Kasi pag dinamihan mo yung accumulated depreciation mo, ma-adjust mo na yung carrying amount so that the carrying amount is to be equal to the revalue, kumbaga yung tinatawag nating recoverable amount. Okay? So, i-adjust mo yung carrying amount dahil impairment yon. Pag dinagdagan mo yung accumulated depreciation, natural, it will decrease your carrying amount such that after adjustment, the carrying amount is already equal to the recoverable amount. Got it? Now, I already mentioned earlier what cash generating unit is. Okay, pag sinabing cash generating unit, it is a group of assets. No, normally nagkakaroon ng recognition of impairment, recognition of impairment loss when let's say a group of assets or a cash generating unit is to be disposed of. Okay? So, di ba, meron tayong mga cash generating unit, let's say isang business segment, close down na siya. No, anong gagawin dun sa mga assets? The assets will be what? The assets will be disposed of. At kapag upon disposal, nire-recognize na rin natin ang impairment loss. The last to go or the first one to be exhausted whenever itong cash generating unit na to is to be sold, okay? So ang unang-unang ine-exhaust natin ay goodwill. So once goodwill is exhausted, Eh di ang gagawin mo, ang babawasan mo yung remainder of the impairment loss will be absorbed by the carrying amount of all identifiable assets that are to be disposed. If you still remember that. No? So, kung maaalala nyo sa intermediate accounting, yung merong isang cash generating unit consisting of identifiable assets and goodwill. Kapag nagkaroon ng impairment loss, saan mo i-charge yung impairment loss? Unang-una, i-charge mo siya sa goodwill until the goodwill is exhausted. Kapag meron pang natira na impairment loss after exhausting the goodwill, then the remainder or the remaining impairment loss will be what? Allocated to the remaining identifiable assets that are to be disposed. Siguro naman naiintindihan nyo yon. Now, except cash. Kasi alangan naman yung impairment loss, i-allocate mo sa cash. Cash is cash. No? Okay. What about receivable? Of course, yung receivable na yan, no, minus allowance for, syempre, kapag merong allowance for doubtful accounts, hindi mo na pwedeng yung impairment loss, no, i-allocate mo pa doon sa receivable. Bakit? Kasi nag-recognize ka na ng allowance for doubtful accounts, di ba? Kaya ibig sabihin, pag sinabi nating allowance for doubtful accounts, which is already, deducted from accounts receivable, di ba? Ang tawag natin net realizable value. Kaya yung natitira or the remaining goodwill or rather the remaining impairment loss will no longer be applicable or will no longer be allocated to receivable net of allowance for doubtful accounts. Kaya ang mangyayari lang, yung mga the remaining identifiable assets that are to be disposed, no, that is where you will allocate the remaining impairment loss. I'm sure that you can still recall that, no? Okay, impairment of goodwill should be tested for impairment when? Annually. Kasi goodwill nga siya non-identifiable asset nga. And that goodwill is not to be amortized. Nung unang panahon, ina-amortize namin ang goodwill. Pero ngayon, hindi na ina-amortize ang goodwill. 'Di ba? If you are a full PFRS company, no? Except of course kung SME, iba yung ating guideline for SME, nag-a-amortize pa ng goodwill doon. Pero if your company is a full PFRS company, hindi SME, then goodwill is only tested for impairment annually, but it is not amortized annually. No? Ang kapalit niyan, natural, you have to subject goodwill to impairment test annually. No? Okay. So, yan ang pinagsasasabi dyan. Okay? Now, question. Pwede ba ang recoverable amount ma-recover? Okay? So, let me change my question. Pwede bang ang impairment loss ay mabawi? Ibig sabihin, kasi 'di ba, sabi natin market value, the fair value is fluctuating. Minsan mababa, minsan mataas. Paano kunwari, let's say we already in the past year we recognized impairment loss. So true enough, talagang mababa yung carrying amount compared with the recoverable amount. Kaya we recognized impairment loss, let's say last year. Paano kung this year, nakabawi yung market value? Biglang tumaas, all of a sudden, tumaas yung market value. Is there a chance that we can reverse the impairment loss that we recognized last year? The answer is yes. We can. Okay? So we can reverse the impairment loss that we recognize in the previous periods. Yun yung sinasabing reversal of an impairment loss. Kaya lang, syempre, yung reversal of impairment loss is only to be to the extent of the impairment loss that we recognized last year or in the previous periods. Hindi pwedeng mas malaki pa yung gain on reversal of impairment, hindi mas malaki pa yung kunwari, let's say, nakabawi. Okay? So, ire-reverse mo yung impairment loss. O sabi mo, teka, no, maliit lang naman tong impairment loss, meron pang matitira, no. The gain on reversal of impairment should only be limited to the impairment loss that you recorded in the previous period. Hindi pwedeng you should not what? You should not record whatever is the excess. Okay? So, ang ibig ko sabihin ay ganito. There is such thing as gain on reversal of impairment kapag nakabawi yung fair value. Okay? We can adjust. Again, we can adjust the depreciation for the future period for those assets that are subject to depreciation. Di ba kasi ang entry natin, let's say if it is a PPE item, debit impairment loss, credit accumulated depreciation. Ngayon, the following year, nakabawi yung market value. So, paano gagawin natin? No? Ang mangyayari dyan, it means to say, babawiin na naman natin yung accumulated depreciation and we will credit gain on reversal of impairment. Now, gain on reversal of impairment is what? A P&L item or a profit or loss item. Pinapakita din natin yan sa computation natin ng net income. No, we present it also in the income statement, just like impairment loss. Kaya yung gain on reversal of impairment loss, no, is also shown as a P&L item. Okay? So pwede pala 'yon, nakakabawi yung market value. Okay, now. Ayan, nakalagay lahat diyan, naka-outline, Ayan. Now, of course, disclosure. Now, let me show you how impairment of assets is presented in the or is disclosed in the notes to FS. So, let me show you. Kasi lahat naman ng mga asset, as I mentioned earlier, may have been subjected to impairment test. Okay? At maaaring na-impair yung ibang asset. So, let's see, Jollibee financial statements, particularly notes to financial statement pertaining to impairment of asset. Para magkaroon na tayo ng idea what it is. Okay, so eto yung ating. Teka, wait lang ha. I'll change my screen. Hirap hindi lang mapakita lahat Sandali. Sana sabay-sabay Okay, so let's see. Jollibee. Nasa na si Jollibee? Ayan. Okay. Look at this. So, tingnan natin yung notes to FS, particularly itong PPE. Let's use PPE as our example. Our example. Ito, teka. Mamaya yung goodwill and other intangible assets. Note 12. So, let's see note 12. I think it is on page 71. Note 12. Ang hirap gawa ng disclosure, Ang haba-haba. Teka, note 12 tayo. Note 4 pa lang ito. Note 12. Mahirap maging accountant. Tingnan mo, ang dami-daming gagawing notes. Ito, note 12. So, it is the note on PPE. Tingnan lang natin, Okay. So, as you can see, tingnan mo, pag sa PPE, yung disclosure, for each group of asset of PPE, kailangan pakikita mo yung movement during the year. Okay, so meron kang what do you call this, a schedule showing the PPE items, no, the movement during the year, whether nag-increase or nag-decrease, di ba? Okay, tingnan natin yung impairment of asset dito. Wala bang na-impair? Wala atang na-impair. Dali. Hindi na nakakita. Nakakita ko sa financial asset eh. Walang na-impair. Ito impairment. Okay, ito na lang sa this is note number 13 on 14 on goodwill and other intangible asset. A goodwill is subject to impairment test annually. O, tingnan natin. Ang note showing the impairment testing of goodwill and other intangible asset. Basahin lang natin. Goodwill acquired through business combination have been allocated to 9 CGUs, o CGU raw, cash generating units, which are subsidiaries of the parent company owned directly or indirectly. The recoverable amounts of the CGUs have been determined based on value in use calculations using cash flow projections. Ayan. From financial budgets approved by senior management covering a 5-year period. Ito ang sinasabi ko sa inyo. Pag naggagawa kayo ng cash flow projection, kailangan at least 5 years yung period. Year 1, Year 2, annual cash return ng Year 1, Year 2, Year 3, Year 4, Year 5. Okay, yun ang basis mo. Saan mo makikita yon? Sa financial budget. So marami palang uses ang financial budget. So pag meron ka ng 5-year period na expected cash flow and then alamin mo magkano yung discount rate, by all means malalaman mo ano yung present value factor or ordinary annuity factor that you will use in order to get the value in use. Pag may value in use ka na, then the next thing that you do, hanapin ang fair value, i-minus mo yung cost of disposal. O, para ma-compare mo na. Kaya tingnan mo yan, no? Yung recoverable amounts have been determined based on value in use. Ayun, hindi fair value minus ano. So, ginamit lang nila yung value in use. Pwede naman yon in the absence of fair value minus cost of disposal, then gamitin mo yung value in use. Okay. So, yun, ano? O, tingnan mo, ito yung mga CGUs nila. Okay. And then, tingnan mo yung discount rate. Ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo, no? Namimili ka or kailangan alamin mo ano yung discount rate na gagamitin. Kasi without the discount rate, hindi mo malalaman ano yung present value factor na dapat mong gamitin. Okay, so nakalagay dito, key assumptions with respect to the calculation of value in use of the cash generating units as of December 31, 2012 and 2011 on which management had based its cash flow projection to undertake impairment testing of goodwill are as follows. Discount rate. Paano nila kinumpute yung discount rate? Ay, yung WACC, yung weighted average cost of capital. Totoo pala yun, ano? Ito ay actual na. No, kaya yung mga pinag-aaralan natin, mai-apply niyan later on, no? Whether you are a financial accountant or you are a management accountant or you are an auditor. O, kaya yung mga pinag-aaral niya, may mga ibig sabihin yung mga yan, ano? Hindi yan dekorasyon lang. O, kita mo, ang discount rate na ginamit nila ay based on the WACC, the weighted average cost of capital. 'Di ba? Ano pa? Mga long-term growths, earning before interest, etc. Wala na yung impairment. Okay, tingnan natin yung sa financial asset. Kanina nakita ko yung impairment paragraphs nila eh. Now, next meeting, no? Nandun na tayo, medyo mahihirap yung next meeting. Financial instruments na tayo and all related accounts. May impairment ba to? Wala siyang impairment. Okay. So, teka, available for sale securities. Wala ito. Okay. So, yun lang, ano, so I've just shown you how you disclose impairment, no? Impairment of asset. Okay? So, This is PAS 36 come alive. Actual yan, actual. Okay? So, next. Teka, punta tayo sa dati natin. Change again my screen. Ayan. Okay, so let's answer the multiple choice questions. Okay, number 1. Kunin na dahil marami pa tayong di-discuss. Okay, under IAS or PAS 36, impairment of assets, the following assets are subject to impairment testing. Inventory, asset arising from construction contract, asset arising from employee benefits, property, plant, and equipment. Ang answer natin ay letter C. Bakit letter C? Eh kasi yun lang ang scope ng PAS 36 kasi nakalagay okay, saan ba applicable ang PAS 36? Yung inventory may specific yan, PAS 2. Assets arising from construction contract, PAS 11. Assets arising from employee benefits, PAS number 19 as revised. Property, plant, and equipment, PAS 16. So only property, plant, and equipment is subject to PAS 36, impairment of asset recognition. Diba? Okay, so the answer is C. Number 2, an impairment loss occurs when, letter B, the carrying amount of an asset exceeds the recoverable amount. Pagbaliktad, ay walang impairment yun. No? Okay. Number 3, when assessing the recoverable of assets that have previously been subject to an impairment loss, all of the following indicators assist in providing external evidence that an impairment loss has reversed. Ang answer natin, letter C. Market interest rates have decreased during the period. Okay, kasi pag may direct impact ang interest rate sa mga assets, no, sa value ng asset or particularly the market value of an asset. Eh dito nag-decrease no ang interest rate, therefore naka-recover yung value ng asset. Okay? So answer natin is letter C. When an impairment loss in relation to a CGU is reversed, it is allocated on a pro-rate basis to the assets of the unit except for goodwill. Okay? Yan yung sinasabi ko sa inyo. Ang una mong gagawin pag may impairment loss, ano mo kagad, i-exhaust mo yung goodwill. Kapag meron pang natira, sabihin natin, ang impairment loss ay 1 million. Ang goodwill ay 200,000. I-exhaust mo lahat yung goodwill na 200,000. So may matitira ka pang impairment loss na 800,000 that is not yet allocated. Ang gagawin mo, i-allocate mo on a pro-rate basis to the assets of the unit, the identifiable assets of the unit, except nga cash and the net accounts receivable. No, but all others pwede, kagaya ng land, kagaya ng plant, kagaya ng equipment. So ang answer natin dito is goodwill. Ayan. Kasi yun ang unang-unang i-exhaust mo, yung goodwill. Yung the rest or the balance will be allocated on a pro-rate basis to the other assets of the unit. Yan, ha? Okay, next, number 5. So number 5, ang answer natin dito, during 20X4, SACO Limited estimated that the carrying amount of goodwill was impaired and wrote it down by 50,000. In a subsequent year, the company reassessed goodwill was decided that the old acquired goodwill still existed. The appropriate accounting treatment in the subsequent period is that C, ignore the reversal as it is prohibited by PAS 36 or impairment of asset. Kasi goodwill yan. No? Nakaka-recover ba ang goodwill? No. Okay, kaya since yung goodwill natin, hindi naman tayo nag-a-amortize niyan, then you will have to ignore the reversal because it is prohibited by PAS 36, no? Impairment of asset. Okay, number 6. Answer natin dyan, letter A. In relation to the impairment of asset, PAS 36 impairment of asset requires the following disclosure for each class of assets. Answer natin, all are required. Letter A. No? Next, 7. Answer natin, letter A. Yan. Number 8, ang answer natin, letter D. Meron akong explanation dyan. No? There are 2 steps in the test of impairment. The first is to compare the carrying amount of the reporting unit to its fair value. If the fair value exceeds the carrying value, there is no need to perform the second step of valuing the unit's assets and liability. Goodwill is never tested at the entity level. Number 8, answer natin dyan, dog. Perform step 2 of the test of impairment. May test of impairment eh. Okay, number 9, letter B ang answer natin. It is a fall in the market value of the asset so that the recoverable amount is now less than the carrying amount in the statement of financial position. Answer, impairment. Okay, 10, what is recoverable amount of an asset? So the definition is B, fair value less cost of disposal or value in use, whichever is higher. Yan, dali lang ano. 11. Estimates of future cash flows normally would cover projections over a maximum of 5 years. Number 12. Which of the following is not a cost of disposal? Finance cost. 13. It is the smallest identifiable group of assets. Ano to? Definition of the CGU or cash generating unit. So let's read. It is the smallest identifiable group of assets that generate cash inflows from continuing use that are largely independent of the cash flows from other assets or group of assets. So this is the definition of cash generating units. Number 14. Oh, value, a recoverable amount ito. The higher of the fair value less cost of disposal and value in use. Recoverable amount. 15. So when deciding on the discount rate to be used, which factor should not be taken into account? Answer, letter D. Not ang nakalagay. Risk is specific to the asset for which future cash flow estimates have been adjusted. May guideline tayo dyan, di ba? How to select a discount rate. Okay, mismo sa PAS 36. Okay, so in accordance, ano answer natin dito? In accordance with PAS 36 impairment of asset, which of the following statements are true? Okay, letter D, true lahat yan. Okay? Next, in accordance with PAS 36, which of the following asset must be tested for impairment annually? Okay, ang answer natin, number 2, 3, and 4. Okay, 2, 3, and 4. Any assets where there is, hindi all assets, ha? So, any assets where there is an indication of a potential impairment, all intangible assets with indefinite useful lives. Kung ang trademark mo may indefinite useful life, ay subject yan sa impairment test annually. Goodwill, di lalo na acquired in a business combination is, sabi nga natin, is subject to impairment test annually. Kaya answer natin dyan, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So, yan, ano? So, I hope that everything is clear about impairment of assets. No? Okay, so let's now go to investment property. Sa totoo lang, ang investment property, it's really easy to understand. Kasi para siyang PPE. No? In fact, in form, it is land and building. The only difference is that of the use, or the intention of management. Kasi although it is in the form of land and building, we cannot say na siya ay PPE. Kaya nga siya investment property. Dati-dati wala kaming account when we were still studying. Wala namang account na investment property, no? Lalagay lang yan sa other investments but not really investment property. At pag investment property, it is only confined in the form of land and building. Pero hindi siya tatawaging land and building simply because hindi siya PPE, but investment property. Okay, so let us discuss what investment property is. Now, investment property is is or rather has a specific PAS, and that is PAS number 40. Yung lahat ng mga PAS, tandaan mo, natatapos yan sa PAS 41, which is agriculture. Tapos PAS kaya madaling maintindihan eh. Madaling maalala. PAS number 40, kung ang last na PAS ay 41, which is agriculture, no? PAS 40, no? Ano yan, katabi ng 41, PAS 40 is for investment property. So, yan lang dalawang yun ang line of four. Eh sabi ko bakit end na yung PAS number 41 at saka yung PAS 40 and PAS 41. Kasi yung susunod, yung cut-off niya, PFRS na. PFRS na. So ibig sabihin, no, ang last na PAS series, sa series of PAS, no? Pronouncements pa yan pronouncements pa ng old IASC, no? Hanggang PAS 41. So may 40 investment property, 41 agriculture. Tapos na-cut na. Okay, so nagkaroon na ng IASB, kaya PFRS 1 na, PFRS 2, PFRS 3, etc. Naging PFRS na. Bakit? Bago na yung organization eh. Na-reorganize nila into IASB. Okay? Kaya napakadaling tandaan. Dalawang PAS lang ang line of 40. So 40 and 41. 40 being investment property. 41 being agriculture. Okay, tapos na tayo dun sa agriculture. Okay, so doon na tayo sa 40. Investment. Okay, so wait lang ha. I'm gonna share my screen. Nasaan na ba tayo? 40 investment property. Wait lang, wala dito. Sa dami ng ating files. Sandali ah. Ay, kukuha muna ako ng snapshot natin. Ay, aray ko. Snapshot. Yeah, wait lang ha. Close ko. Stop ko muna ha. Okay, no need. O, sige. No need to open your camera. Basta importante lang eh, nandiyan kayo, naka-on kayo. How many are we? Oh, we are just, how many? We are 50, 68. 68 by 12, 58. 68. Okay, wait lang. Today is April 2020. Mamaya, one more. Ano natin? Okay. All right, so let's continue. Investment property. Okay. Yan. So, investment property. So, definition of investment property, a property in the form of land or building or part of a building or both. Okay? Kita nyo, walang makina, walang machinery, walang equipment, walang furniture and fixtures. No? Only land or in the form of land or a building or part of a building or both. By the owner, no? So, meaning to say, it is a property held by the owner or by the lessee under a finance lease but not under operating lease. Okay? So, held by the owner or by the lessee under a finance lease. Ano ba yung finance lease? It is a rent-to-own contract. Di ba? Okay. To earn rentals. So, ito yung purpose niya, no? To earn rentals, no? For a capital appreciation or both. Anong ibig sabihin? Yung mga condominium, paglagay natin, yung company meron siyang condominium. Yung condominium na yon ay pinapalis niya. Pinapaupahan niya under operating lease. Tanong, what is the purpose of that condominium? It is to earn rental and not to be used for production, for distribution, or even for administration. Hindi ginagamit for production, for administration, or for other purpose except to earn rental. Pinatayo yung building or yung condominium para ipaupa. Okay? Now, what about the other one or the other reason or purpose of investment property? Ang nakalagay dyan, for capital appreciation. Example, bumili ako ng lupa. Hindi ko naman ginagamit sa operation ko sa business ko. Diyan lang siya kasi may excess money ako eh. No? Bumili ako ng lupa. O basta nandyan lang siya with no definite purpose. Basta nandyan siya. Malay natin sa mga susunod na mga taon, tumaas ang value nun. At kapag ibinenta ko yan, meron akong capital gain. Now, what is that piece of land for accounting purposes? Hindi ko siya pwedeng sabihing PPE yon kasi hindi ko naman ginagamit sa operation ko sa business. Ano yon? It is an investment property. Bakit? My purpose is only for capital appreciation or both. Pwedeng sabihin ko, parentahan ko yung land. Di ang aking purpose is to earn rental. Kunwari yung kalahati nun, hindi ko na maipaparente. For capital appreciation, gagawin ko lang. Basta nandyan lang siya. So, or both. No, meaning to say, meron akong kalahating pinarerenta, may kalahati ako na, yan, naka-stay lang siya dyan. Okay, for capital appreciation. Or, pwedeng sabihin, for indefinite purpose. Okay, so yun ang ibig sabihin natin ng investment property. So that investment property is not PPE. Kasi tingnan mo, look, ano ba ang PPE? Okay, PPE is kumbaga an asset that is operational. Ginagamit sa production or ginagamit sa distribution o ginagamit distribution of products or service or ginagamit siya for administration. O yun ba ang investment property? Definitely hindi siya ganon. Ang tanong, dine-depreciate ba ang investment property? It depends. Kung cost model ka, ide-depreciate mo. Pero kung fair value model ka, hindi mo siya ide-depreciate. Okay? Kasi from time to time lang, change lang ng change ang fair value so that you will recognize any unrealized gain or loss on the change in fair value of the investment property. Di ba? So, ibig sabihin, kakaiba siya doon sa purpose or sa management intention. Although land siya in the form of land or building, hindi mo gagamitin yung account title ng land at saka building kasi mapapagkamalan siyang PPE. Kaya talagang isi-single out siya in the, in the list of assets. Ang tawag sa kanya, investment property. Okay. Now, what are examples of investment property? One, land held for long-term capital appreciation. Matagal lang, basta nakatenga lang yung lupa niyan. Basta standby ka lang dyan. Hindi naman kita gagamitin ngayon. Who knows? Baka later on, after several years, I may change my mind. No? Instead of for capital appreciation, gagamitin ko na siya, tatayuan ko na siya ng factory. In that case, you have to transfer or reclass from investment property to PPE. Ay, pwede pala yun, i-reclass? Yes, if there is a change in management intention. O kunwari, sabihin natin, it used to be a real estate. No, let's say a real estate company, di syempre yung mga subdivision lots nila, no, they are inventory kasi real estate company, no, inventory nila yung mga subdivided lots, houses and lots. Ay paano kunwari, let's say yung isang building doon or pati kasama na yung land, gagamitin nilang administrative office. O tanong, ano pa ba yon? PPE ba yon? No, magche-change ka ng intention eh. No? Magiging from inventory, magiging PPE, pero nasan yung investment property? Ganito na lang. Kunwari yung condominium, no? Na dati it used to be for rental. Ang ginawa ng company, i-convert niya into an administrative office. Oh. Hindi na niya pinarerentahan yung condominium, ginawa na niyang administrative office. Okay, siguro laki nun, no? So ano mangyayari? There will be a reclass, no, a reclassification or a transfer from investment property to PPE. Kasi yung condominium is already what? It is already company or owner occupied. Kasi pag sinabi nating owner occupied, ginagamit sa business, therefore it is a PPE. Okay, so kapag owner-occupied, PPE. Kapag hindi owner-occupied but it is really intended for rental or for capital appreciation, then yun ang investment property. Oh. Gets nyo na? O, ganun yon. Kaya dapat marunong kayong mag-classify kung ano ba yan, item na yan. Kasi kung ikaw ang accountant ng company, tatanungin ka ngayon ng boss, anong treatment natin dito? Investment ba ito? Investment property or PPE ito? O wait po, babasahin ko lang po yung yung PAS 40. Oh, ganon Example of investment property, land held for long-term capital appreciation, land held for undetermined future use. Hindi naman alam kung anong paggagamitan ng land na yan. Okay, therefore, it is investment property. Building leased out under an operating lease. Okay. Dapat operating lease lang hindi rent to own or finance lease Okay, so building leased out under an operating lease. Vacant building held to be leased out under an operating lease. Property that is being constructed or developed for future use as investment property kasi nandun na yung management intention na gagamitin siya as investment property so that even during the construction period, the investment property is not yet complete kasi kinoconstruct pa lang, investment property na siya. Okay? Now, what about items that are not considered as investment property? Ito, naku, dami. It's outside the scope of PAS 40. Property held for use in the production or supply of goods or services or for administrative purposes kasi PPE ito. Company, owner occupied Property held for sale in the ordinary course of business or in the process of construction of development for such sale. Bakit naging inventory? Yung mga realty company, binebenta nila in the ordinary course of business? Di ba mga lupa at mga bahay? Mga structure, building. O tanong, ano yun? Since they are to be sold in the ordinary course of business, realty company kasi, kaya inventory yun. PAS2 yun. Okay? And what about this, in the process of construction or building, in the process of construction or of development for SAT sale? Ano yan? Na mga construction company. Hindi yan investment property. Okay? Bakit? Construction firm yun construction company. Ibig sabihin, they construct building for third party. Sinong third party? Customer or kliyente? Okay? Tanong, investment property ba yung kinoconstruct ng mga building? No. No, they are not investment property. Okay. Property being constructed or developed on behalf of third party. Kasi construction firm nga. Okay. Owner-occupied property. PPE yan. Okay. Property leased to another entity under a finance lease. Bakit? Sooner or later, hindi na ikaw ang owner nun. Diba? Finance lease, ang pinag-uusapan lang natin na investment property ay operating lease lang, under operating lease contract. Okay? So, other classification issues. Ayan, may mga issues daw. Okay. Ano yung mga issues na yon? Tingnan natin, no? Ayan. A property interest that is held by a lessee under an operating lease may be classified and accounted for as investment property. Correct. The rest of the definition of investment property is met. The operating lease is accounted for as if it were a finance lease in accordance. Okay, so property held under operating lease lang. Ibig sabihin yan, dahil operating lease, then sino ang owner? Ang owner yung lessor. Ang pinag-uusapan nating reporting entity dito yung lessor. Okay, the lessor. Okay, so the lessor has to account it as investment property. Kasi operating lease. And you are still the owner kahit iba pa gumagamit ng building. You're still the owner of the building because it is an operating lease. And you are the lessor. Yun na ibig sabihin. No? Kaya investment property yun ng lessor. Okay, partial own use. Okay. If the owner uses part of the property for its own use and part to earn rental, di ba may mga ganyan, kagaya ng mga, sabihin natin na may condominium. Yung may floor na ginagamit for administrative purposes, ano yon? Owner-occupied yun, PPE. Paano yung ibang pinare-rent? So, isang building lang siya, pero partly pinare-rent nila and partly ginagawa nilang opisina or ginagamit nila for their business. Ang tanong, ano yon? Is it investment property or is it building as PPE? Tingnan natin. If the owner uses part of the property for its own use and part to earn rentals or for capital appreciation and the portions can be sold or leased out separately, they are accounted for separately. Pwede mo ibenta? Yes, kung pwede mo ibenta yan separately, then you have to account for it separately. Kaya partly investment property and partly PPE. Therefore, the part that is rented out is investment property. If the portion cannot be sold or leased out separately, the property is investment property. Kaya ganito ang kunwari sabihin natin, ilang floors yon? Sabihin natin 5 floors. No, yung ground floor, pinauupahan mo hanggang second floor. Yung third floor, fourth floor, and fifth floor, ino-occupy as opisina ng company. Pero yung first floor or ground floor, second floor, pinaparenta. O sabihin na natin, yung first floor, second floor, third floor, pinaparentahan. Okay. Yung fourth floor at fifth floor, ginagawang opisina, business office. Okay. Tanong. Okay. Pwede mo bang ibenta per floor? If the answer is yes, then may portion ka na investment property. So, alin ang investment property? Yung first floor, second floor, tsaka third floor. Yung fourth floor, tsaka fifth floor, PPE yun. Why? Because they can be accounted for separately. They can be sold or leased out separately. Pero, kapag hindi, Meaning to say that the part that is rented out is in, if the portion cannot be sold or leased out separately, the whole property is to be considered as investment property. Di ba? So the property is investment property only if the owner-occupied portion is insignificant. Ibig sabihin, part lang siguro or isang floor lang ang lahat ng floors for rental. Tapos isang floor lang yung sa building ay yung for business office. Anong gagawin mo? So all of those are investment, all of those, no? Okay? Investment. All of those investment property. Why? Because the property, no, that is being occupied by the company and used for business, no, is just an insignificant portion of the whole building. Kaya titingnan, no? Kaya depende na naman sa professional judgment ni accountant. Oh, you see, you will use your professional judgment. Which one is significant and which one is not. Ayan. Okay? Ancillary services, lalo na sa mga hotel, 'di ba? May mga ganyan, may mga janitorial services, o yung mga ganon, no? Meron mga may maintenance services, etc. Yung mga condominium, di ba? May mga ganyan. So if the entity provides ancillary services to the occupants of a property held by the entity, the appropriateness of classification as investment property is determined by the significance of the service provided. If those services are relatively insignificant component of the arrangement as a whole, no? Then the entity may treat the property as investment property. Where the services provided are more significant, such as in the case of owner-managed hotel, the property should be classified as owner-occupied. Titingnan mo which is significant and insignificant. So, significant versus insignificant. Kunwari, sabihin natin, yung ancillary services, only janitorial services, no, are provided by the company o the owner of the building. Di ba may mga ganon, mga condominium, pero yung janitorial services, yung palang, courtesy pa nung kumbaga care of the may-ari, magbabayad yung mga, yung mga tenants, no? May mga ganon. So, kung insignificant lang yung ancillary services, then the whole property is investment property. Okay? Pero kapag sa mga hotel kasi ganyan di ba? Sinong nagbibigay ng services? Kunwari, owner-managed hotel. O, ang laki-laki ng ancillary services, then it's company occupied. No? Kaya titingnan mo which one is significant and or not. Okay? So, tingnan mo yung ancillary services kung significant or insignificant. Pag insignificant lang, then the whole thing is investment property. Pero kapag significant, titingnan mo which one is more significant than the other. Okay? So, ganon. So, intra-company rentals. Ano yung sabihin ng intra-company? Eto, group of companies sila. Kunwari, the parent company owns a building. Ang kanyang mga tenants ay mga subsidiaries niya. Yun ang that's an example of intra-company rental. Ang tanong ay ganito, whose investment property it is? Okay, so dito it matters a lot. Anong klaseng financial statement are you presenting? Is it a consolidated financial statement or an unconsolidated financial statement? You should know. Okay? So, grupo ito grupo ng kumpanya. O sige, intra-company rentals basahin natin. Property rented to a parent, subsidiary, or fellow subsidiary is not investment property in consolidated financial statements that include both the lessor and the lessee. Because the property is owner-occupied from the perspective of the group. Kaya itong mga intra-company rentals na ito will not be yung mga building na pinarerentahan nila or property na pinarerentahan nila, no, to a parent, to subsidiary, it may be upstream or downstream. Hindi yan investment property but company or owner-occupied property, meaning to say PPE, for purposes of reporting consolidated financial statements. Okay? Naku, ganun pala yun, ano? So, siya ay hindi i-consider na investment property, kundi owner-occupied or PPE. Kasi yung mga tenants niya, mga kagrupo niya. Parent subsidiary. Or it may be the subsidiary who owns the building. Tapos nagre-renta yung parent. Tanong, yung building ba investment property? The answer is no. It's owner-occupied or PPE. When the lessor and the lessee belong to the same group. Right? Okay, however, may however, such property could qualify as investment property in the separate financial statement of the lessor. Kaya sa consolidated FS, hindi investment property, hindi, ano yan, PPE yun. Pero kapag unconsolidated statement and you are reporting, reporting the financial statement of the lessor, then it is an investment property of the lessor. Kaya i-qualify nyo anong klaseng financial statement ang pine-present mo. Consolidated FS ba? Kasi kapag consolidated FS, hindi investment property yung building, kundi owner-occupied or PPE. Okay? Pero kung unconsolidated financial statement yung nire-report mo, on the FS of the lessor, it is to be considered as a what? An investment property. Kung ang parent ang lessor, the parent has its own or separate financial statement, right? Dun sa separate financial statement ni parent, dahil siya yung owner ng building, at siya yung lessor. At sino yung lessee, yung subsidiary. Sa separate financial statement ni parent, it is an investment property. Pero sa consolidated financial statement na siya rin ang gumagawa, siya ay PPE. Gets nyo na? Kaya titingnan nyo, i-qualify nyo, anong financial statement? Consolidated financial statement ba? Or group financial statement? Or separate financial statement of the lessor? Ayun, So, may may twist doon, Okay, eto na tayo sa recognition and measurement. First, initial recognition and measurement. Walang problema because it is always at cost. And what is the cost? The cost of the investment property is none other than its fair value. Alam problema. 'Di ba? Ngayon, initial measurement 'yan. Ngayon, ang tanong, paano kung may mga transaction costs? What will you do with the transaction costs? Ika-capitalize mo as cost of investment property. Okay? Hindi transaction expense kasi yung transaction cost is to be capitalized as cost of investment property. Tandaan. Okay? Paano pag subsequent measurement na, recognition and measurement? Eto na. May option ka na ngayon. Kung mag-stick ka sa cost model, i-depreciate mo yung investment property just like PPE. Cost minus accumulated depreciation and impairment losses. Okay, subject din siya sa impairment loss, di ba? Okay, so kung cost model ka, i-retain mo siya as cost model. So every year, you have to depreciate. And you have to show it at carrying amount, and the carrying amount is equal to the cost minus its accumulated depreciation and impairment losses. Paano kung sabi nung company, ay better kung fair value model ang gamitin natin? And if it is a fair value model, anong ibig sabihin? Ibig sabihin yan, every end of the reporting period, hahanapan mo siya ng fair value. And any changes in fair value, whether increase or decrease, will be taken up as a gain or unrealized gain or unrealized loss on changes in fair value of investment property. O, gets nyo? O, kaya depende kung fair value model ka or cost model ka, subsequent ano yan, recognition and measurement. O, di ba? O, ganun lang yun. Walang problema yan. Kailan mo siya, kapag fair value model, ayan o, nakalagay, investment property is remeasured at fair value. See? It is remeasured at fair value so that any gains or losses arising from changes in fair value of investment property must be included in net profit or loss for the period in which it arises. Gets niya? Okay, so ganda, no? Galing, ang dali lang, ano, intindihin. However, kung ang gagamitin mo ay cost model, ay mag-depreciate ka. Cost less accumulated depreciation and less accumulated impairment losses. Okay? Eto na. Paano kunwari nagkaroon ng change in management's intention as to the use, no, of the investment property? Sabihin natin, realty company, yung kanilang ino-occupy na opisina, ang ginawa nila, sige, benta na rin natin yan in the ordinary course of business. Gagawin natin, subdivide natin, laki-laki naman itong natin, yung lot area natin. At saka itong kalahati na lang yung building natin na gagamitin. Kasi pwede naman natin iparenta yun sa iba eh. O ano mangyayari? So there will be a transfer from investment property to from PPE to investment property. O ano yon? That's a transfer from PPE to investment property. O kaya naman, no, yung dati mong pinarerenta, yung tenants, pinaalis mo yung mga tenant mo kasi gagamitin na ng negosyo. No? Sabihin natin, gagawin siyang opisina. Ano mangyayari? There will be a transfer from investment property to PPE. Pwede pala yon, di ba? Yan yung sinasabi nating transfer to or from investment property classification. Ngayon, meron mga guidelines dito on how to record the transfer. Ito, may mga rules, kagaya nito, there are rules. For a transfer from investment property carried at fair value to owner-occupied property or inventory, the fair value at the change of use is the cost of the property under its new classification. For a transfer from owner-occupied property to investment property carried at fair value, PAS 16 should be applied up to the date of reclassification. Any difference arising between the carrying amount under PAS 16 at that date and the fair value is dealt with as revaluation under PAS 16. Okay? So ang importante dito is that you recognize the transfer or the reclassification from or to investment property. Okay? Ayan. Ayan, ito importante ito. When an entity uses the cost model for investment property, hindi fair value, hindi fair value model. Kunwari, ang pinili ng company ay cost model. Nagkaroon ng transfer between categories. Ang tanong, maaapektuhan ba nito ang carrying amount? Okay, ito ang sagot. Transfers between categories do not change the carrying amount of the property transferred, and they do not change the cost of the property for measurement or disclosure purposes. Kasi cost model eh. Kung ano yung carrying amount ng investment property, yun ang gagawin mong PPE at carrying amount din. No? So, ibig sabihin, it does not change the fact na cost pa rin yun. Cost model pa rin yun. No? Kaya meron kang updated for as long as you have an updated carrying amount, no, o PPE or carrying amount of investment property, pag nag-transfer ka between category, the same pa rin ang carrying amount. No? Okay, kasi cost model ang ginamit mo. Okay? So, yun Kaya mahirap maging accountant, ano, ang daming rules, ang daming ano, ang daming may mga policies tayo, 'di ba? Okay, mga accounting policies. Oh, ayan ito. Disposal. An investment property should be derecognized. Ano ibig sabihin nga ng derecognize? Ike-credit mo na sa libro, tatanggalin mo na sa libro. O, di ba? Isi-zero balance mo na sa libro. Yun ang disposal natin. Yun ang derecognition na sinasabi natin. It is written off or removed or eliminated from the books. So an investment property should be derecognized on disposal or when the investment property is permanently withdrawn from use and no future economic benefits are expected from its disposal. The gain or loss on disposal should be calculated as the difference between the net disposal proceeds, kung may proceeds, and the carrying amount of the asset and should be recognized as income or expense in the income statement. P&L item na naman. Okay? So, kung merong proceeds from disposal versus the carrying amount, then the difference is accounted for as gain or loss on sale or on disposal of investment property, just like PPE. Okay? So, yan ang ibig sabihin natin. Okay, disclosure. Mga disclosure requirements, no? Hmm? Tingnan nga natin ang investment property sa ating FS. Okay. Sandali ah. Nakakita tayo ng disclosure requirements. Okay. Nasaan na ba tayo? Nasaan na yung ating sample? Ako nawala yung sample natin ah. Sandali. Jollibee. Ayan. Tingnan natin ang investment property. Kung mayroon siyang disposal or whatever movement. Nasaan ang investment property nito? Tingnan natin sa statement of financial position. Ayan. Maghanap nga tayo ng eto, note number 13. Ayan ang investment property ni Jollibee ng 2012 and 2011. Matagal na to no? Pero tingnan natin, investment property, note 13. Tingnan natin si note 13. Note 13. Anong note na to? Ang haba ng dinidiscuss, ano? Ay, naku, note 4 pa lang to. 13 tayo. Ayun, malapit na. Tingnan natin kung meron siyang 13. Ayan, investment property. Eto. Tingnan niyo pag-report ng sa notes ng investment property. Ayan, no? Just like PPE, magpapakita ka ng schedule, you will present a schedule showing the movement of investment property. Ayan, no? Meron silang retirement and disposal, translation adjustment, etc. Okay, kasi may mga properties ang Jollibee outside of the Philippines. O, ayan, no? Ano ang mga klase ng kanilang investment property? In the form of land, building, and building improvements. Ayun, okay? So, yan, ano? Ayan. Cost model si Jollibee. Ayan, no, may accumulated depreciation and amortization. No? Ibig sabihin, ang ginagamit nila ay cost model to account for their investment property. Yan. Di ba, Pakita ka ng ganyan, no? yung movement or changes in the balance of investment property. Okay, see? Hmm. Kaya yung mga schedules nyo, mga summaries nyo, naku, ginagawa talaga yung mga yan. Ayan, eto, tingnan mo ito. The accumulated impairment loss provided in the value of land amounting to 46.4 million and 25.3 million respectively represents the excess of the carrying amount over the estimated recoverable amount of the non-income generating investment property which is its estimated fair value less cost to sell. Ayan. Okay? So, ayan. Nagkaroon daw ng significant change. Does not expect a significant change in the fair value. Ayan. Pati yung mga in determining the fair value. O ito, rent income derived. No? Income derived from income generating properties amounted to 32 million, 56 million, and 63.5 million in 2012, 2011, and 2010 respectively. Direct operating costs relating to the investment property that generated rent income recognized under cost of sales and general and administrative expenses. Okay? So, no investment property as of December 31, 2012, 2011 have been pledged as security or collateral for the company's debt. Kita mo, yaman-yaman ng Jollibee, ano? Hindi sila siguro, kukunti lang ang loans nila at yung loans nila unsecured pa. Bakit? Hindi nila pinepledge yung kanilang kasi pwedeng gawing pledge yan or security collateral in order to secure a loan. Hindi niya, kaya nakalagay, no investment properties as at December 31, 2012 and 2011 have been pledged as security or collateral for the company's debt. Okay? So, ako, okay, ano, so, yan ang investment property. Sagutan na natin ang ating mga multiple choice. Dali lang. Sige, gawin natin, ha? Sige, kayo muna mag-answer. Kayo muna. Then, I'll give you the answers. Sige. 5 minutes lang yan. Kaya na. 5 to 10 minutes before I give the answer. You have a copy already? Ay, sorry. Nawala tuloy. Mali ang pindot. Dali. Yan. O, kayo muna mag-answer. Yung ilan ba to? 23. Oh, sandali lang yan. 5 minutes lang yan. Okay, 5 minutes lang. 5 to 10 minutes. O ano na? Sige, answera natin. Teka, wait lang. Okay. Ayan. Okay, number 1, answer. Boy. Number 2, boy. 3, dalawa answer ng 3. Kasi sabi dito, ano eh, which 2 eh. O, edi mag-select tayo ng 2. Okay, so B and D ang answer natin sa number 3. Hindi ora, B and D. Okay, next, number 4, boy. 5, C. 6A. 7A. 8A. 9, boy. 10C. 11A. 12A. 13A. 14C. 15, boy. 16, boy. 17A. 18A. 19, boy. 20A. 21, dog. 22C. 23A. Okay? Next lesson. So let me change my screen now. Provision. Ito. Okay. So, provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets. So, wait lang tayo So, wait lang Wait lang, wait. Hinanap ako. Okay. Now, in our lesson, okay, on provisions, contingent liabilities, and contingent assets, no? The PAS refers to three different items. One is provision, another is contingent liability, and the other one is contingent asset. So let's begin first, or let's begin with provision. Now, in PAS number 37, provision is defined as an existing liability, no, of uncertain timing or uncertain amount. Remember, the word is or. It cannot be both. It should be any, or it should be uncertain timing or uncertain amount, but cannot be both. Okay? So it is an existing liability. What do you mean by existing liability? It is an actual liability because it exists as at the end of the reporting period. Ito ang difference ng provision sa contingency. Ang provision, existing liability na. Whereas a contingent liability is not yet existing as at the end of the reporting period. Its existence or non-existence will depend upon the occurrence of an event, occurrence or the non-occurrence of an event in the future. Okay? Kaya pag sinabi mong provision, actual liability yan, kaya meron tayong journal entry to record provision. May actual entry ka talaga. No? Okay, example ng provision. Ang dami kayang example ng provision. Like for example, yung estimated warranty mo. It's a provision for warranty. Ano entry mo dyan at the end of the reporting period? So you debit what? Warranty expense. And you credit estimated warranty liability. O kaya naman kung ito ay let's say a provision for premium, a debit to premium expense and a credit to estimated premium payable. Or it may be a gift certificate payable. Okay? A gift certificate payable. Okay, so, or sabihin natin, it may be, an estimated liability for damages. Okay? So, example, the company is being sued and being sued by a complainant, a plaintiff. And that the decision of the court is still hanging. No decision yet. Okay, however, there may be a probability that it will become an actual liability. Kaya anong entry mo? Magde-debit ka na kagad sa loss from damages or loss from lawsuit and a credit to estimated damages payable. Okay. So, ano ibig sabihin ng provision? It is an existing liability of uncertain timing or uncertain amount. Hindi mo alam kung kailan siya babayaran. Or hindi mo alam kung magkano exactly ang ibabayad mo. Okay, but one thing for sure, it is already an actual liability or an existing liability. Okay. So the liability does exist, in the balance sheet or in the statement of financial position, but the amount is indefinite, or the date the obligation is due, is not known yet to the payee, or is not known yet. In some cases, the payee cannot be determined, as in the case of estimated warranty payable. Hindi mo alam kung sino yung magke-claim for warranty or for repairs. Yung estimated premium payable, hindi mo alam kung sino ang magke-claim ng premium. Sa gift certificates, hindi mo alam kung sino yung magke-claim ng merchandise because he or she bought a gift certificate. So hindi natin alam, in some cases, the payee cannot be determined. Okay. So, but there is, of course, a journal entry in order to accrue because it is both probable and measurable. Measurable ba? Kasi you can estimate reliably. Di ba? Di ba there are two, sabi nga natin, there are two conditions for recognition, and measurement of asset or liability. And that is, there is a probable, as in the case of asset, there is a probable benefit that will be derived in the future. And that there is, kumbaga, and the amount can be estimated reliably. And so with liability, it is probable that there will be an outflow of asset, no, in a future date, at a future date. Sometimes hindi nga natin alam kung kailan yon, dahil indefinite pa yung future date, or sometimes we do not even know who the payee is. Okay? So, but one thing for sure, nandun yung elements for recognition. Yung elements or criteria for recognition are present. Okay. So, when do we recognize a provision? There are conditions that must be met. The first condition is that the enterprise has a present obligation. No? It has a present obligation, no? And that present obligation may be legal or constructive. It doesn't necessarily follow na it doesn't follow na na contractual, it's always legal. It can be a constructive obligation, no, as a result of past event. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Kapag sinabi nating legal, no, the obligation arises from a contract. Legal or contractual. 'Di ba? Ay, paano kung walang kontrata? O paano kung meron ba may mga cases ba wherein wala namang contract? Kaya lang constructive. Ano ibig sabihin ng constructive? There is an obligating event, and that obligating event is said to be constructive. Example, 'di ba? Ang mga example natin ganito. Suppose the company, no, has already been kumbaga, the company has a tradition or a practice of paying mid-year bonus. Mid-year bonus. Hindi pala, teka. So, aside from 13th month, nagbibigay siya ng 14th and 15th month. Wow, ang ganda ng company na gano'n, ano? Meron ng 13th month which is legal, tapos may 14th and 15th month pa. Now, question, okay, is it right to accrue 14th and 15th month? Example, when do we recognize, no, a liability or a company's liability for what? For 14th month and 15th month. No, i-accrue ba yan? Kunwari, ibibigay yan, let's say for example, month of January na, no? For the year or for the past year or for let's say for 2022, babayaran siya na sabihin natin, July pa. Okay. Pero it pertains to 14th month and 15th month, no, of last year. Question, no, wala naman sa contract. Pero tradition na or a practice of the company to pay 14th month and 15th month. Question, is the company obligated to pay annually 14th month and 15th month? The answer is yes. Although it's not contractual or legal, no, but it is constructive. Bakit? Kasi meron ng practice It has already been a tradition of the company. Kaya si company, kailangan mag-e-estimate siya or mag-a-accrue siya ng liability for 14th month and 15th month because of that constructive obligation. Yan ang ibig sabihin. That's an example of a constructive obligation. Okay, kasi may obligating. Di ba? Yung a criterion for recognizing a provision is that there is an obligating event. Kaya kapag may obligating event, may present obligation. No, because it arose from what? Past event. Diba? Okay. Now, another criterion for recognition of provision is that there is a probable outflow of resources, no, embodying economic benefits, no, that will be required to settle the obligation. Hindi mo nga lang alam kung kailan mo babayaran, maaaring ganon, or in some cases hindi mo nga alam kung sino yung payee. Okay? But it doesn't make it, no, well, it doesn't necessarily follow na dahil hindi mo alam yung payee o hindi mo alam yung date kung kailan mo babayaran, na contingent na siya. Okay, so meaning to say, probable, ano ba ibig sabihin ng probable sa accounting? You know, when you say probable in accounting, it is more than more likely than not. So that means to say, halos sigurado tayo. Probable, probable is not the same as possible. Pag sinabi nating possible, it may be 50-50. But pag sinabi nating probable, it is more than 50. Okay, probable Ibig sabihin, more or less sigurado. No, that an outflow of resources embodying economic benefits will be required to settle the obligation. Talaga magbabayad tayo. Okay, and that the amount of the obligation can be measured reliably. Otherwise, paano yun? Kung hindi ma-measure reliably, paano ka gagawa ng journal entry walang amount? Why? Because it cannot be measured reliably. Kaya para makapag-record tayo ng provision, mag-journalize tayo ng provision, normally it is an item for adjustment at the end of the year or at the end of the reporting period. Kaya meron tayong entry, an adjusting entry to record the accrual of that obligation. Di ba? Kasi kailangan may amount tayo. The amount of the obligation can be measured reliably. Okay, ilang recognition of ilang criteria 'yon for recognition of a provision? 3. No? The enterprise or the reporting entity has a present obligation, whether legal or constructive, as a result of past event. And then another criterion is the probability that an outflow of resources, embodying economic benefits, will be required, to settle the obligation. And then number 3, the amount of the obligation can be measured reliably. 3 yon na kailangan lahat all-inclusive. When you say all-inclusive, dapat lahat ng mga yon masatisfy in order to record a provision. Now, measurement of a provision. Sabi nga natin, how do you measure a provision? How do you measure a provision? Normally, i-estimate natin yan. The amount recognized as a provision may be the best estimate of the expenditure required to settle the present obligation. Diba? At the end of the reporting period. Now, how do we measure it? Normally, minemeasure natin siya, maaaring it may be the obligation is computed or calculated using the present value of the resources required. Pwede bang mag-estimate tayo or mag-measure tayo ng provision based on present value? The answer is yes. You may calculate the present value of the resources required in order to fulfill the obligation, and then measure it in accordance with the standard. Anong standard? Yung PAS number 37. Okay? Or, sabihin natin, we can measure the provision by determining the amount that the entity would have to pay to cancel the obligation. Kaya di ba, doon sa premiums, Di ba marunong tayo mag-compute, Naaalala nyo yung calculation natin ng estimated premium payable or estimated warranty payable. Meron tayong mga calculations na ginagawa, right? Okay, so aside from present value, the use of present value, o pwede rin na yung gagaya ng ginagawa natin pagka-calculate ng estimated premium payable, estimated warranty payable, estimated gift certificates payable, or whatever kind of estimated liability. Di ba? Or let's say we can determine the amount that the entity would have to pay to transfer the obligation to a third party. Maraming ways on how to measure the provision. Kaya lang sabi nga natin, given many estimates, so we will always get the best estimate. Okay? We always get the best estimate. We always get the midpoint among these estimates. Okay? Para at least yung parang weighted average natin. Di ba? The midpoint. To get the best estimate. Okay? Now, sabi natin, We can measure using the present value of the resources required not to fulfill an obligation. Ito na naman yung gagamitan na naman natin ng present value factor. This time, 'di ba ang tawag dito, yung sa impairment of asset, anong ginagawa natin kapag kinukuha natin yung value in use? Yung expected or yung future cash inflows. Dito, no, dahil ang pinag-uusapan natin provision. Ano naman yung ating cash flow diyan? Expected outflow naman of the resources, no, in order to settle the obligation. Okay, and of course, no, we apply the time value of money. Again, ginagamit na naman natin a present value factor. And of course, no, you may also estimate the risk that an actual outflow, or to determine the risk that an actual outflow, no, of resources might ultimately differ from those expected. So lahat ng 'yon ginagamit natin in order to measure using the present value of the resources, no, required in order to settle the obligation. Okay? So, meron tayong mga, 'di ba, sa capital budgeting may mga ways tayo on how to come up with our estimated cash flow, na? Okay. So, madami tayong ways, no? Okay. So, ano pa? Itong mga common types, ano ba yung mga types ng mga provision natin? So I already named a few. Like for example, yung estimated warranty provision. Warranty provision for repairs, di ba? Kapag kunwari meron ka, nagbenta ka ng appliances or whatever na may warranty period, o within the warranty period, you will have to shoulder the repair cost. No? No, within the warranty period. Kaya malilibre ka lang kapag tawag dito, malilibre ka na lang from your obligation kapag yung warranty period has already expired. Pero within the warranty period, meron kang kailangan na warranty provision, no? So estimated warranty payable. Okay? So, yun yung mga sinasabi natin, mga service type warranty. You will provide repairs. You will shoulder the cost of repair. O kaya naman, it may be an assurance type warranty, no? Or sabihin natin, no, service type or assurance type warranty, whatever kind of warranty provision it is. Basta gagawa tayo ng journal entry to record warranty provision. Okay? So, madami yun, ano? Okay. Ngayon, meron din tayong tinatawag na mga legal provision, no? Legal provision. Okay, so in the case of pending or threatened litigation, yung mga kaso or yung mga legal cases na ang decision of the court is still hanging. Kaya lang pwede rin naman nating i-estimate magkano yung damages na babayaran natin, no, in the event that we will lose the case. Di ba? Kaya tinitingnan. And then, of course, we need to be assisted by a legal counsel. Sila ang magde-determine kung ano ang lagay ng kaso, kung ano yung probability na mananalo ba tayo sa kaso. In that case, absuelto. Or in the event na, the court will decide not in our favor, but in the favoring our, the other party to the litigation, ay magbabayad ka talaga for sure. Okay. So, yun yung sinasabi nating legal provision. No? Okay. O kaya naman, it may be, makababasa nyo dyan sa PAS 37. In fact, may mga examples dyan. Like for example, yung mga estimated liability for decommissioning cost. Ano ibig sabihin ng decommissioning cost? Kapag i-phase out mo na yung project, no? You will abandon na the project. You will leave na. Kunwari, let's say may mining operation, you will have to leave the mining, leave the site. Before you leave the site, kailangan meron niyang yung DENR mga regulations that you have to clean up your mess. Kaya normally you always estimate the liability for decommissioning or liability for cleaning up or cleaning, yung mga liability for clean up. no? Or yung estimated clean-up cost. O, yan yung mga sinasabi nating example ng environmental provision. No, an estimate to clean up existing toxic waste, no? Or say kung mining operation yan, restoration of the mining site. Hindi naman para baka mamaya puro hukay doon, which will be hazardous to the community, no? So yun yung mga sinasabi nating liability for clean up cost, liability for decommissioning, no? Whenever you are already winding up your operation o i-decommission mo na yung project. O may mga environmental provision yan. Kaya you have to recognize that. O, o kaya naman, meron din mga tinatawag nating provision arising from onerous contract. O, sabi mo, sige, magbabiolate na lang ako ng contract kasi if I am going to fulfill the contract, the more na mas malaki pa magagastos ko if I'm gonna fulfill the contract or the terms and condition of the contract. Magbabayad na lang ako ng penalty for not fulfilling the contract kasi yung penalty ko for not for breaching the contract, no, the penalty will even be lesser or lower than when I fulfill the contract or the cost that I will incur to fulfill the contract. Yun ang sinatawag nating onerous contract. No, the unavoidable cost of meeting the contract exceeds the economic benefits expected to be received from the contract. Mas lugi pa ako if I am going to fulfill the contract, no? And the benefit does not outweigh the benefit does not outweigh the cost of the contract. The benefit that I will be receiving by fulfilling the contract, no, is even lesser than or lower than the cost of fulfilling the contract. Yun yung tinatawag nating onerous contract. Di magkakaroon ka ng liability for breaching the onerous contract. Diba? Ganun yun, So, yun ang sinasabi dyan sa PAS number 37. Okay? Ngayon, sabi natin, what else? Punta tayo ng mga, provision laging may journal entry in order to recognize a provision. A record or an entry to record accrual of a provision. So, debit, may debit ka, may credit, yan. What about contingencies? Pag sinabi natin contingent, it means to say the occurrence or the liability may arise, in the future, but for now, it is not yet an actual liability. It will become a liability, when upon the occurrence or non-occurrence of an event in the future. A contingent liability, is a possible obligation, but not yet an obligation for now. It is a possible obligation that arises from the past event and whose existence will be confirmed, only by the occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more uncertain future events, which is not in the control or not within the control of the company or the reporting entity. So, unlike a provision is a present obligation. Contingent liability is not yet a present obligation. It is only a possible obligation depending upon the occurrence or non-occurrence of an event in the future. Okay. So, anong gagawin mo sa contingent liability? If provision is to be accrued or to be journalized, contingent liability only requires disclosure in the notes to financial statement. Disclosure lang, mga kababayan. Disclosure lang ang kailangan sa notes to financial statement. Okay? So ito ay hindi probable obligation ha. Ang word na ginamit ay possible obligation. Possible. Okay? So yun ang ibig sabihin natin, possible. Okay, obligation. Okay? It is not probable. It is only possible. Okay, kaya contingent liability lang that is to be disclosed in the notes to financial statement. Paano ko nakalagay? Remote. Hindi possible obligation, remote obligation. Question, will you disclose that remote obligation in the notes to financial statement? Answer, no. Remote nga eh. Possible lang. Okay? Yun lang ang i-disclose natin, possible. Pero kung probable, ay hindi. Pag probable, it is a provision. No? It calls for a journal entry. Pag possible obligation lang, ayan. No? Disclosure sa notes to FS. What about a contingent asset? Pag sinabi natin contingent asset, it is a possible asset. Unlike contingent liability, it's a possible, no? Di ba? Ang contingent liability is a possible obligation. Whereas contingent asset is a possible asset that arises from past event and whose existence will only be confirmed by the occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more uncertain future events which is not within the control of the reporting entity. Ngayon, ang tanong ko ay ganito. Ang contingent asset ba ay gino-journalize? Answer, hindi. Contingent asset is only to be what? It is only to be disclosed in the notes to financial statement. Okay? So, ganon. No? So, may range tayo ha. May mga range tayo ng outcomes ha. Okay. Kapag virtually certain, no? Therefore, when you say, nakalagay sa problem, virtually certain yung event mangyayari or yung mag-o-occur occur in the future. Virtually certain. No? And it is not contingent anymore, but virtually certain. Okay. Kapag contingent liability, that's a provision. Kapag kunwari let's say, virtually certain na contingent liability, hindi na, virtually certain na eh. Therefore, provision na siya. Okay? So, ibig sabihin yan, pag virtually certain, sigurado. Hindi na contingent liability na yan, provision na yan. Sigurado ka ni. Although hindi pa nangyayari, pero nakikitang sigurado na hindi na contingent yan. Provision na yan. Okay? So, ganon, ano? No, kung probable, nakalagay lang sa atin, no? Probable. Pag yan, liability, yung provision yan, probable eh. Paano kung possible lang? I-disclose mo lang sa note. Paano kung remote? No disclosure necessary. When it comes naman sa contingent asset, kapag virtually certain, sigurado, may entry na yan. You will have to recognize na. May entry? Yes, may entry na. Paano kung probable lang yung contingent, probable lang? I-disclose mo lang sa note to financial statement. No? Sabi mo, probable eh. Okay, hindi kagaya ng liability. Pag probable na, di nagpo-provide ka na, nag-a-accrue ka na, pero pag contingent asset, hindi pa rin. I-disclose mo lang sa notes to financial statement. Kasi contingent asset eh. Okay. Kung possible, di ba tayo pag contingent liability, possible obligation, anong ginagawa natin? Dinidisclose natin sa notes to FS. Paano kung ang contingent asset possible lang? Wala kang disclosure. So, ibig sabihin, pag contingent asset, para ma-disclose mo sa notes to FS, kailangan probable siya. No? Contingent asset ang pinagsasasabi ko, kailangan probable siya para magkaroon ka ng disclosure ng note. No disclosure no in the notes of FS. Pero kung possible lang siya, yung contingent asset, you will not disclose anymore. Eh lalo naman pag remote, no disclosure necessary for contingent asset. Kaya kailangan alamin mo ano to, contingent liability ba to o contingent asset. And then tingnan mo yung range ng outcome. Okay? Para malaman mo what will be the accounting treatment. Kasi ang importante diyan, anong gagawin mo kung may ganun? Oh, ikaw yung accountant, ikaw magde-decide ngayon, ano tong item na to? Ano ba to? I-disclose ko lang sa note o gagawan ko ng journal entry? Ayun. Oh, kaya kailangan alam mo rin yung range of outcome. 'Di ba? O tayo, pag sinabing virtually certain, sigurado. Pag sinabi nating probable, ibig sabihin, hindi 50-50, mas malaki ang chance na mangyayari. Okay. So possible, 50-50 yan. Pag remote, nako, less than 50% yan. Ibig sabihin, yung kanyang yung remote nga eh. Kaya kailangan alam mo yung range of outcome so that you will know how to treat the item. Yun. Okay, ganun yun. Pag virtually certain, ang sabi ko sa inyo, ito, mga probability, bigyan ko kayo, sige, lista nyo dyan, lista. Hindi ko sinama dyan sa ilista nyo. Pag virtually certain, ano ang probability? It is above 95%. Sigurado ka na, virtually certain. Ano nga yung probability? Ang probability is above 95%. Wow! Halos almost 100%, di ba? Yun ang virtually certain. Pag sinabi nating probable, ang ibig sabihin niyan, yung probability, yung sinabi ko sa inyo, is above 50% and up to 95%. No? Above, the probability is above 50% and up to 95%. What about if the outcome is just, or let's say yung probability niya is only possible? Possible lang. Ang possible, ang probability niyan is between 5% and up to 50%. Hindi siya lalampas ng 50%. Yan yung sinasabi nating possible. Eh pag sinabi nating remote, ang probability niyan mga below 5%. Ayun, yun ang mga yun yung mga outcome, yun ang mga interpretation natin, It could be, ganon, Okay. So ulitin ko, for virtually certain, no, probability is above 95%. Okay? Kapag probable, the probability is above 50% and up to 95%. Kapag possible, the probability is between 5% and up to 50%. Hindi siya lalampas ng 50%. Eh, pag sinabing remote, probability is below 5%. Okay? Para, alam mo naman tayong mga accountant, quantitative tayong mga tao. Kaya pag sinabi na virtually certain, ano ibig sabihin ng virtually certain? If you are given a number line, ano yun? Ano ibig sabihin ng probable? Ano ibig sabihin ng possible? Ano ibig sabihin ng remote? Di bigyan natin ng numerical value. Ganyan naman tayo eh. And even in audit, lagi tayo kahit nga yung risk assessment, yung degree of risk. When do you say that it is high risk? When do you say it is moderate risk? When do you say that it is only low risk? Kailangan natin lagyan ng percent. Ganun tayong mga accountant. Para precise, di ba? Okay. So, precision is important in accounting. Okay? Ganun lang yun. Anong mahirap dyan? Okay, so answeran na natin yung ating mga, because it's, sandali Okay, teka, nahanap ko. Where is mine? Ayan, ito. May mga examples tayo dyan, kagaya ng mga examples of provisions, circumstances, or circumstance. So, restructuring by sale of operation, i-accrue mo ang provision. Restructuring by closure, no, or reorganization, you will also accrue. Warranty, you will also accrue a provision. Land contamination, di syempre may liability ka, no, in order to clean up the land. Okay, so you will also accrue a provision. Ito yung sinasabi nating environmental provision. Customer refund. Edi ito parang mga legal ano to mga this is parang something a sort of warranty provision. Siguro assurance type ito. Accrue if the established policy is to give refunds, no? Offshore oil rig must be removed accrue a provision when installed and add to the cost of the asset. Abandon the leasehold 4 years. Ito, meron kang, you are under lease contract. Inabandon mo yung lease. You accrue a provision. Okay? So, yan ang mangyayari dyan. Siguradong may penalty ka. Siguro baka onerous yung lease contract. Ay, abandon ko na lang rather than continue it. Mas magbabayad na lang ako ng penalty. Okay, so you may accrue a provision. Okay, CPA firm staff, no, staff training for recent changes in tax law. Yung mga sending to training. Alam mo, yung mga training cost. Alam natin yan, ano? Yung mga training cost, hindi mo ina-accrue yan. It will be recorded when it is incurred. Okay? It will be, adjusted or recorded or recognized, no, when it is incurred. Wala tayong future cost for training. You do not accrue. No, you only take it up immediately upon incurrence, no, when you incur. So no provision for training cost. No? There is no obligation to provide the training. Although it is necessary, but the company does not have any obligation not to provide the training. Okay? So major overhaul or repair, no provision. There is no obligation yet. Onerous or loss-making contract, you accrue a provision. Ayan. Okay? So those are circumstances. No? Ayan. O kagaya ng mga companies na nag-i-streamline ng kanilang operation, maaaring it may result to a layoff. No? A layoff. No, workforce layoff. Di magbabayad ka. Meron kang you have to estimate liability for restructuring. Natural, pag ni-restructure mo or ni-reorganize mo yung kumpanya, meron mga mawawalan ng trabaho. What about if they are regular employees already? Babayaran mo yan. Baka offeran mo ng mga retrenchment yan. No? Offeran mo ng mga early retirement yan. So you have to recognize liability for restructuring. So that is one example of, establishing or setting up liability for restructuring. So a restructuring is sale or termination of a line of business, closure of business locations, changes in management structure, and fundamental reorganization of a company. No, so restructuring provision should be accrued. Ano-ano yung mga example ng restructuring provisions that must be accrued? Sale of operation, ibebenta mo na yung business segment. No? So you accrue provision only after a binding agreement, no, is what do you call this, is signed up, no? So a binding sale agreement, no, is already present. Ayan. So ano pa? Okay. So pag wala pa, di natural, you will only disclose but you do not accrue. No? But if there is already a binding sale agreement, no, i-accrue mo na. Sigurado na yun Meron ng binding sale agreement Closure or reorganization, you accrue only after a detailed formal plan is adopted and announced publicly. So a board decision is not enough. Kailangan may formal plan na, no, and then in-announce na sa publiko. I-announce na sa sa general meeting na there will be reorganization or closure. So ibig sabihin, a board decision to pursue a closure or reorganization is not enough in order to support an entry to accrue a provision. Okay? So, yon ano, kaya kailangan meron ng detailed formal plan. Ito ang gagawin natin, magre-reorganize tayo and then in-announce na publicly. No, whether in writing or in social media or in a general meeting only, o yan. Kaya yun ang ibig sabihin, sigurado na magkakaroon ng closure or reorganization. So, mag-a-accrue ka na ngayon ng restructuring provision. Future operating losses. Provision should not be recognized for future operating losses even in a restructuring. Pag ganyan nga, ina-anticipate mo yung operating loss, wala yan. Hindi yan, walang provision for that. Okay? So, walang entry for future operating losses. Restructuring provision on acquisition. Accrue provision only if there is an obligation at acquisition date. Ayan. So, pati yung mga timing ng timing ng journal entry, no? Kailangan precise ka, no? No, baka mamaya unahan mo pa, hindi pa naman sigurado. Hala, sige, nag-accrue ka na. Okay? So, sandali ah. Okay, so let us answer. Ayan. Ikaw, wait for a while. Stop ko lang. Dali. Nawala na. Dali ah. Dali. Ito. Okay, so let me dictate the answers, no? Wait lang. Okay. So answer natin, ha? Number one. Ano, rest na ba? Ano ba yan? Tapos na naman. Number one, ayan. According to PAS 37, provision contingent liabilities and contingent asset, when providing for the future, no, a future event such as the cleanup of a contaminated site, gains and other cash inflows that are expected to arise on the sale of asset related to the cleanup must be treated as follows. Okay, letter B ang answer natin. Measured separately of the provision. Okay? So, number two, anong klaseng provision yan? Environmental provision, di ba? Number two, the following statement made in PAS 37, no? A contract in which the unavoidable cost of meeting the obligation under the contract exceed the economic benefits expected to be received under it. Ano to? This is the definition of an onerous contract. No? Letter A. Okay, next. Macan Limited announced its plans for a major restructuring of its operation. So under PAS 37, no, the entity is able to, letter C, provide only for restructuring costs that are directly and necessarily caused by the restructuring. No indirect costs, only direct costs that are directly attributable to restructuring. No? Next, number four, Parcel Limited is a manufacturer of swimming pools and provides its customers with warranties at the time of sale. The warranty applies for 3 years from the date of sale. Past experience shows that there will be some claims under the warranties. The appropriate treatment of this item under PAS 7 is to, letter B, provision yan ha, recognize the best estimate of cost as a provision. Ayan. Okay, next, number 5. Kaya yan ay estimated warranty payable, no? Okay, or liability for warranty. Okay, next number 5. A railway company is required under the law to overhaul its rail tracks every 3 years as a safety measure. The appropriate treatment of this event for the purposes of preparing financial statement is letter B. Estimate the future maintenance costs and charge as depreciation over the next 3 years. Ayan. Okay, next, number 6. On January 27, no? Ah, 20 ano yan nakalagay sa inyo diyan? Oh, sige, hindi bale. Change ko lang yung year, no? Pero ang answer niyan, teka, letter B yan. Okay, letter B. So, disclosure is necessary in the notes. Next number 7, disclose but not accrued. O, ayan daw. The amount of loss. Management can estimate the amount of loss that will occur if a foreign government expropriates or sinequester yung some company assets. If expropriation is reasonably possible lang ha, a loss contingency should be letter A, disclosed but not accrued as a liability. Okay, next. Okay, ito ang answer natin, letter B, increase in both expenses and liability. Number 9, letter D. So, kunin nyo na lang yung answer. Number 10, letter C. Number 11, letter A. Number 12, letter dog. Number 13, letter C. Number 14, letter C, as a provision for loss. Number 15, letter C. Okay? C yan. Number 16, letter boy. The debt must be reclassified as current. Number 17, notes payable. Number 18, letter boy. An event which is not recognized because it is not probable. Number 19, letter C. Number 20, letter A, obligating event. 21, letter A, best estimate of the expenditure. So verbatim, yung mga nakikita nyo dyan, verbatim doon sa, na minention doon sa, sa PAS 37. Number 22, ito, when there is a continuous range of possible outcomes, and each point is that in that range is as likely as any other. The range to be used is the midpoint. Okay? Kunwari, pare-pareho sa number line na ganon. Kunwari, pare-pareho sila ng distansya or yung probability na pare-parehong ganyan. Range of outcome nga. So, which one is the best estimate kung nasa gitna? The midpoint. Okay? So this is defined as a structured program that is planned and controlled by management that materially changes either the scope of a business of an entity or the manner in which the business is conducted. Answer, restructuring. Which is an example of a cost of restructuring? Letter A, cost of relocating business activities from one location to another. Okay, next, 25. 25 is letter A. For which of the following should the provision be recognized? No? Hindi pwede ang B. Future operating losses, wala naman tayong provision for that. Obligations under insurance contract. O, reductions in fair value of financial instrument. Kaya, ang gagawa natin, ang provision ay letter A. Obligation for plant decommissioning cost. Anong klase yan? Environmental provision. 26, letter A, future refurbishment cost due to introduction of a new computer system. Okay, so lahat ay, ito, letter B, letter C, letter D, no? You will have to recognize provision except letter A. 27, letter B, which of the following statement is incorrect concerning contingent asset? A contingent asset is only disclosed when the occurrence of the future event is possible or remote. Hindi, di ba? Kailangan probable para ma-disclose. Okay, next, 26. Answer, a company did not record an accrual for a present obligation but disclosed the nature of the obligation and the range of the loss. How likely is the loss? Reasonably possible. 29. Okay, gain contingencies that are remote and can be reliably measured should not be reported nor disclosed. Ayan. Pending litigation would generally be considered, okay, contingent liability. Ayan. Okay, so no more. Okay, so I'll check again the attendance, no? So wait for a while. Sige, stop natin. I'll get the attendance. So kukuha muna tayo ng, okay. So, I'll get a snapshot for our attendance today. Okay. Okay, we will continue next meeting. So, meron pa tayong isang hindi na discuss yung accounting for income taxes. Next is, eto na yung if you will make an advanced reading, PFRS number 9. And then inclusive dun sa PFRS number 9, we will discuss accounting for receivables. Although talagang walang PAS that is specific, no? Specific to receivables. So makikita natin kasi loans and receivables di ba? Okay, so financial asset din naman siya. Kaya pag-aaralan natin in the light of PFRS number 9, including yung mga alam nyo yung mga accounting for credit losses, no, on loans and receivables, no. PFRS number 9, and then yung mga related PFRS like PFRS number 7 on financial instrument disclosure. Tapos investment, ito magkakasama, investment in associates and joint venture. So yung tatlong yon pag-aaralan natin next meeting. No? Plus others if we still have time. Kaya lang mahaba yung PFRs number 9. Okay? Sige, I'll see you then next week. Bye-bye. Sige na, call it a day na. Pahinga na kayo. Kumain na kayo. Gutom na tayong lahat. Okay, sige. You're always welcome. Sige, bye-bye. See ya.